You've heard the best, now it's time for the rest. This is the worst films of 2021. 2020 was a pretty bad year for cinema and didn't have a lot of great films and had no shortage of bad ones, but this year had a lot of ones that were way worse than last year's and some that were pretty much on the same level. If that makes sense, because that was kind of poorly said, but you get my point. Also, something different, last time I did have a list for this so I could look at it, but I had it off camera. This time I have it in my hand because I have so many honorable mentions for this that I forgot what I put on here. And just to give you some perspective, I left off like probably about a dozen and I still have like 30. So for the best, I had 6 honorable mentions here. Let's just get into the honorable mentions. I got a long list. Injustice, Flashback, Escape Room Tournament of Champions, Spirit Untamed, Army of Thieves, Home Sweet Home Alone, Mortal Kombat, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Outside the Wire, Coming to America. My throat's still not in the best of shape. I'm still not fully recovered. Coming to America, Halloween Kills, Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, Under Wraps, Malcolm and Marie, Clifford the Big Red Dog, and Secret Magic Control Agency, which surprisingly is still one of my most popular videos. How did that happen? And yeah, I'm going to hold this the entire time because the order of this is kind of weird because there's almost all of these are on the same level of suck. So I'm going to need to glance at this every once in a while. But with that said, let's get into the garbage. Number 10. Dear Evan Hansen, I saw this for free at a pre-screening and I was still tempted to ask for a refund. This is one of the most embarrassing musical films I have ever seen in my life. The acting out of pretty much everybody is terrible, which is kind of surprising given the talent involved. The direction is superbly I wouldn't say incompetent, but very uninspired. The musical numbers are not especially enticing to look at when 90% of the choreography is just people walking around through hallways. The message is kind of cluttered beneath all the horrible things the main character does and gets very little repercussions for it. And I've never seen the musical, but apparently, and it does have Evan get called out for his bullshit. In this one, he really doesn't. There are no consequences for this shitbag doing all this stuff, and Ben Platt should not have been brought back for this. He deserves a Razzie for this film. He really does. Number 9, Red Notice. Believe it or not, I had high hopes for this film. Netflix films are not known for quality. There's no other way to put it. They have some good films, and hell, they even had Trollhunters, Rise of the Titans, and Tick Tick Boom, which made the best list. So they kind of put out hit or miss films. They had a lot of shitty ones last year, including Cuties, which I still haven't seen, and I never will. So, I was kind of interested because you had 2 very talented actors headlining the film, a $200 million budget to back it up, and a pretty decent concept of a cop working with a huge thief to capture another thief. That's an interesting idea, but it's squandered by one of the worst twists in film history. Special effects that don't look like they're from a $200 million budget. I'm guessing most of that budget went into Reynolds and Johnson's pockets. Because the effects look terrible, especially with that bullfighting scene. Ugh. And the escape scene from the prison, just, ugh. It's not funny, especially when it's got Ryan Reynolds doing his Deadpool shtick again, just like every other film he makes nowadays. But he has no funny dialogue to back it up. Godot still can't act to save her fucking life. The action sequences are not exactly impressive, with some really bland choreography and some really shit camera work. This is probably one of the most disappointing films of the year, and I got some more disappointments on this list to back it up. Speaking of shitty Netflix films, number 8, Army of the Dead. I hate Zack Snyder films probably more than anybody else on the planet. But what the fuck? Just nothing in this makes sense. The concept alone is stupid as shit. Like, the idea of zombies taking over Vegas could have been a cool concept, but he skipped over that in the first 5 minutes. The rest of it's this boring-ass heist film in this really shitty, sterile wasteland with with a really boring color palette, awful characters ranging from stupid to insufferable. Like, none of them are likable, I swear to God. A plot that's already not... And the treatment of zombies is just laughable, to say the least. I don't know what Snyder was smoking when he came up with it. I don't know how anybody can be proud of this film. This is one of the worst zombie films I've seen in a while. That includes the Disney Channel Zombies movie. I'd honestly rather go watch that. Number 7, Sweet Girl. Hello again, Netflix, you disappointing piece of shit. Oh man, you guys all know what I thought of the ending of this movie. Another example of one of the worst twists in film history. And had the twist been reversed, I think it would have been pretty decent. Go watch my review for more detail on what I mean on that, but I gotta move on. The action is horrendous. For an action film, it's very poorly done. The camera work and choreography are both atrocious. The acting out of both Momoa and Merced are just terrible. Like, these are two talented actors, but they seem completely out of their element here. The dialogue is atrocious. The very concept for this movie, like, just overall, is just atrocious. Like, I want to go into more details with these, but that's not really the point of this video. You want more details, go watch my reviews. So, oh man, I'm gonna get angry if I keep talking about this film too long, so I gotta move on. Number 6, Chaos Walking. Good Christ. This movie suffered in development hell for over 2 years, and now I can see why. Apparently, the studio deemed the original cut of this movie unreleasable, so they did a ton of reshoots. Yet this was releasable? My ass. Tom Holland's acting his ass off, and God bless him, but I just want to hug him and tell him, dude, it's not worth it. You got No Way Home coming up soon. It's not worth it. It's really not. Daisy Ridley still can't act. She's never been a great actress, in my opinion. She wasn't very good in the Star Wars movies, and she's playing the same character here. This Mary Sue type, this clueless mouth breather for that the entire film. She's becoming the British Kristen Stewart. She really is. Honestly, I'd take Daisy Ridley over Kristen Stewart any day, but I digress. Mads Mikkelsen could have made a great villain, but the villain isn't a great villain. So all that gets chucked out the window. The ending of this, with how the villain is defeated, is not only completely contradictory to the book's ending, where Todd surrenders to the mayor, which actually seems like an interesting concept. Would have been a cool lead up to a sequel. I may actually go and read the book. But he's killed in such a stupid fashion. And I'm trying to think. This movie is one of the most forgettable films I've ever seen. And thank God, if this movie stuck in my memory, I'd be so much more angry at it, but I can't even get angry at this movie. This movie's just flat out dumb as hell. Number 5, Tom and Jerry. What happened to this franchise? Tom and Jerry used to have so much dignity to it. It's a simple cartoon about a cat chasing a mouse, and a bunch of slapstick comedy ensues. It's simple. And now they have all these shitty films come out. Like, they got the Willy Wonka crossover, they got the Wizard of Oz crossover, which actually wasn't that bad, but I digress. The Robin Hood crossover, the Nutcracker crossover. I wouldn't be surprised if a Batman crossover came up at some point, but that might come up at some point. Hell, Scooby-Doo did multiple, so. But this is the Smurfs. It really is. It's the exact same thing as the Smurfs. These animated characters are in New York City because I guess no other city exists in films like these, where a bunch of unlikable human characters show up. Honestly, this film was so bad, I couldn't even finish it. I legitimately didn't finish this movie. If you go and watch my review, I tell you that I couldn't finish it because I got so angry with about 20 minutes left, I shut it off. I'm glad I didn't pay to see this in theaters because I couldn't even finish it. And I'm telling you right now that the film I couldn't finish is still only at number 5. That's the kind of shit we're in for. Number 4, Eileen Wuornos, American Boogie Woman. I know I probably pronounced that wrong, but I really don't care. Daniel Farrands can go fuck himself. Oh my god. After the haunting of Sharon Tate and the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson, you would think studios would have given him the boot at this point. But nope, he got 2 films this year. American Boogie Man and Woman. The first one being Ted Bundy. How does this guy keep getting work? The directing is superbly incompetent, the dialogue is laughable, the acting is terrible from some decent actors from what I can tell, and it treats this serial killer like a joke. Like, I get the idea of demoralizing serial killers, like, sure, why not? Sure, why not? Make them look like shit. But when you're trying to make a serious biopic, it's not gonna fly. Something like Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile did that very well for Ted Bundy. I'm assuming American Boogeyman did not, but I didn't watch that one, because after seeing this, I said, nope, I'm not watching the other one. I'm not even sure why I watched this one, but I honestly didn't know Daniel Farrands was attached to it until after I saw it, and I'm like, yep, that makes sense. Give this asshole a boot. No more. Number 3. Matrix Resurrections. Honestly, for a good 20 hours, I had this at number 1, because after I learned that this was just a liberal vanity project, I wanted to put this at number 1 so badly. But then I remembered what the other 2 were, and some people decided to remind me, not intentionally, but they ended up reminding me why I had what I had at number 1. And I guarantee most of you probably know what it is, but I'll get to that in a bit. Not only, being a liberal vanity project is a sin enough to make the list regardless, but even as a film, it's just utter shit. I thought Keanu Reeves could act. Like, I knew he couldn't for a good 20 years, but I thought he improved. I thought he got good since John Wick. Why is he terrible in this? Was he trying to replicate his terrible performance in the first 3? Seems like everybody is. The only one who seems like he's trying is the guy who plays Morpheus in this. I can never pronounce his name correctly. It's like Yahoo. I give up. I'm not pronouncing it. All this entire thing is overly meta and not in a fun way. It's a very lazy way. About 50% of this movie is original footage. They play so many clips from the other films that it shows how far this director is up their own ass. Like, it's not funny bad. It's just an embarrassing, shallow piece of shit. And I hope we get no more Matrix films. Unless they want to make something good and not involve the Wachowskis. Like, if you want to make a good Matrix film, by all means, you can, but not with the Wachowski at the helm. No. Number 2, Space Jam: A New Legacy. Fuck you, LeBron James. I could rant about why this movie sucks for hours and hours, but really all I can say is fuck you, LeBron James. The fact that you have this communist playing as your lead automatically makes this movie suck, but even still, his acting is atrocious. But let's move on. I don't like the first Space Jam. I don't. I think it's stupid. I really do. But I understand why people like it. People think it's part of their childhood. Oh, it's a 90s film. It's people who like that one are like the same is like me liking a Goofy movie. It's like the same Goofy movie's far superior, but I understand why people like it. It's a product of its times. That's what I was thinking of. So I understand why people like the first one. I don't think anybody liked this one. At least not unironically. Because literally nothing in this works. The $150 million budget, I guess half of that was flushed down the toilet because the CGI looks atrocious. The story is superbly incompetent. The villain, Algae Rhythm, yeah, I'm sure some studio executive thought, or some writer thought that was really clever, and they went around the office high-fiving each other, not realizing how stupid that pun is. And Don Cheadle clearly doesn't give half a shit. He clearly knows he's in a shitty film. Because he didn't bother to act here. And there are no stakes in this whatsoever until like the last 20 minutes when some extra bullshit is just layered on. The The whole plot with LeBron and his son, like, I know LeBron James is an asshole, but they're trying to paint him as this good guy, yet all you do is make him look like an asshole. I mean, props for accuracy, but it's not fitting your narrative. Number one. The number one worst film of 2021 is Zack Snyder's Garbage League. Yeah, there was no question about this. Like I said, for like 20 hours, I had Matrix Resurrections at number one when I found out it was a liberal vanity project. But the next day, some Snyder crybabies decided to show up on my feed again, and they reminded me why I had this film at number one. Everything about that, not only do I hate the fandom so much, I hate this director so much because he's such a pretentious pain in the ass who thinks he's and a fan base that thinks he's a god when really he's like a pawn. I want to say he's like a pawn in Warner Brothers bullshit, but no, he's like a peasant in Warner Brothers bullshit because he's such a garbage director. Not only that, this film alone is just terrible. You can tell me this is a Guillermo del Toro film, and I would still think this is the worst film of the year. The director, even though I hate this director, it does not change the fact that this is probably my least favorite movie of all time. The action is some of the worst I've ever seen in a Hollywood blockbuster. The acting, very hit and miss. The story, what story? There's barely a story to this. World building, absolute nonsense. Effects, not impressive, especially considering the budget this movie had. Soundtrack, fuck no. That is one of the worst soundtracks I've ever heard in my life. Especially when we had this year we had Cruella, which had an amazing soundtrack. To get this is flat out insulting. And just the simple fact that this movie is so far up its own ass that it added 2 extra scenes, one involving Martian Manhunter and one nightmare scene that thinks, oh yeah, we're gonna add this shit for no reason just to justify our existence. Go fuck yourselves. And I've heard reports that the Flash movie is going to erase Snyder's sins. Please, if that is the case, I will freely claim The Flash is the greatest comic book movie ever made. Okay, that's not true. Maybe the best DC film. So that's it. That's all we have for 2021. And I'm looking forward to what we got in 2022. And we'll do this as a yearly thing. We'll look at what we have upcoming. What do we got? Okay. Okay. Alright. 2022 shaping up to be pretty damn good. Ah, fuck you. I hate my life.